Here we go, guys. You're listening to Love, Guns, and Freedom with Luca Zanna on K-Talks, 1340 AM and on United States, the FM network. By the way, people ask me, what is this United States of the FM network? Let me tell you exactly what it is. First of all, it's one of my websites. Yes, I have several websites. UnitedStates.fm. More important, it's a network of other websites. And every one of you listeners who has a website, you can have my show for free. Not only for free, I want you to propagate it, I want you to share it, I want you to copy and paste it. So I can send you the script that you can automatically be updated with my show every time the show is out there. Why? Because this is the best way we can share this information. Through a network of people, free individuals. You don't need to be CNN, we don't need to be one of these corporate media. We can do it with the information through the internet till we have it, let's use it. So if you have a website, you talk about freedom, you talk about guns, you talk about love, you talk about humanity, talking about, standing up for our rights, send me an email, go to my website, lovegunsfreedom.com, and my email is there on the top page, and I'll send you the link that you can just copy and paste on your page, and automatically you will become like a radio broadcasting my show 24/7, and every time the new show is up there, you got it. That's it. Simple as that. So this is United States of the FM network. Now, this is the hour about guns, and we don't talk just about guns. We talk about different things. Of course, last Sunday we had an incredible interview with my friend Roy Ward that I never met in person, and many of you guys, I don't know you in person, but I consider you brothers or sisters and sisters. Because even if we talk over the phone or even we talk through the internet, we know each other, we share the same cause, we dream the same dreams, we fear the same fears, and we try to do our little part. So I call you brother, sister. Now, the idea is this one. This hour for me, it's a tool to try to share information that probably could be outlawed in many other countries, and in this country maybe pretty soon. So till I have this microphone, I will use it. As I said, it's not just about learning how to shoot. It's also learning how to have a mindset to be prepared for what's already here, not what's coming. Talking about resisting tyranny. That's the bottom line. So we will not talk about on the show about the latest gun from Shots, the show or, the fancy holster. I couldn't care less. Seriously, I don't care if you have a slingshot in your hands. All I care that you have a good heart. You're a person with morals. That means you're not an evil person and you stand for this republic. Then if you have a Mosin gun for $99 or $3,000 AR-15, I couldn't care less. But at the same time, there is more than just guns. And we will go today to have incredible news to share about a revolutionary rifle I'm going to share with you. I've been planning about this for the last 6 months. I want to talk about preparation. There are 3 basic foundations in every type of military operation. And we are not soldiers, don't get me wrong. Some of you, of course, are, or at least you've been veterans, but we are citizens. And I tell you, what we used to be during this republic, when we used to be a republic, during the foundation, we did not have a standing army, was the militia. Every law-abiding person, every person between the age of 16 and 45 in the state of Arizona automatically is part of the militia. And I have a guy with me today in a few seconds that is an expert. He wrote books about it, and he's been studying more than I do. But it is not just about having a rifle and be able to shoot straight. That's a good start. It's also about to communicate. So the 3 legs that every infantry should be based upon is shooting, moving, and communicating. Now, how do we communicate? And before we go ahead, I'm not saying that we have to do any type of violent act. So don't start to get too excited, your little, wannabe Gestapo thugs there who is trying to provoke some sort of a violence. No, I'm talking about something that is protected by my First Amendment. It's talking about educational purposes. We're talking about preparation for law-abiding citizens to stand up for our rights for this country, this republic, against you, scum, foreign and domestic. Anyway, I'm kind of excited today. Let me bring the guest in before I talk too much over myself. Glen Davis from Williams, Arizona. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I think my rant was pretty much done for now. First of all, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good today.
Okay, you hear the news. I sound kind of frantic today because I have good people that I know in person, that I met, and I know that have done nothing wrong, and I know that some of them they've been killed, and some of them they probably maybe already dead. They are somewhere in some federal prison probably, and without due process really so far. There is no foundation or anything, but it's happening. I really believe we are living right now in the first stage of this soft tyranny is becoming harder and harder, and this sort of a National Defense Authorization Act now is sticking up. So I'm here to try to share some information with you. You're a veteran on top. I would like to remind everybody exactly a little background about you. You go ahead, introduce yourself now. But the point is, I want to share some good information about communications with you and exactly about ham radio, something that we should all know a little bit. First of all, Glenn, give us a short story about your background, who you are, and where you've been.
Well, I was in the Navy for, I'm a retired Navy veteran. And like many people, I basically didn't, the Constitution, I kind of knew about it, and, the book reports I read and stuff. But it was actually when I got out and started studying the Second Amendment for a friend of mine that I really began to understand, hey, there's something wrong here. But so I did study a lot on the militia in particular. And what most people don't realize is the militia is not just about shooting, tyranny and all that stuff. That's we're supposed to protect our citizens, and that includes peaceful stuff, such as we had a storm in Williams a while back, and many elderly were trapped. They couldn't get to their medical appointments and stuff. So part of the militia is to go in, dig them out, and get them to their medical appointments, and things like that. So it's not just about. There's all sorts of peaceful uses for the militia, and in the Revolutionary time, they were called the committees of safety. They didn't actually use the term militia.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly, was it?
it's and that's exactly what it was, to protect your neighborhood, your counties, and then your state in that basic order. You know, uh, Neighborhood watches, whether they choose to believe it or not, are conducting militia operations because it's a citizens force.
Exactly.
But anyway, it's in communications. Again, not everybody can carry a weapon. Not everybody can, has that fortitude to do what must be done at times. So there are other options. There's medical. You know, uh, we need people who can perform medical operations and communications, like you're saying. And this is not just militia. In fact, the ham uh, world has emergency, and it has from the beginning. It has emergency groups set aside to provide communications in a natural disaster
Mm-hmm.
when all other communications have failed. Cell phones aren't going to work sometimes during a natural disaster. So you can get to the ham operators, and they're usually set up reasonably
Let's talk 1 second exactly
available.
what is a ham radio, because I know many of you guys, you're already expert, you already may know, but I'm trying to reach out the person that probably said, he wants to learn, she wants to learn, but I have no idea what's going on, has no idea. What is a ham radio, first of all?
Good point. Back in the days when radio first started, people wanted to get on and talk and do Morse code and all the things that have been done all along. And so they developed the. It wasn't the FCC at the time. I don't remember what it was, but it was the communications, uh, government communications forum. But they set aside frequencies for broadcasters such as yourself for news, information, and entertainment. And then they set aside private frequencies for people to talk to one another, and they called that was called amateur radio, vice professional,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a there's a bunch of stories on how the word ham got into it, but basically it's also called ham radio. But the idea is that, like I say, it's used for personal communications, just like you'd use your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, you don't even if you went and got a technician license, for example, you don't even have to buy a radio. They have so many facets of amateur radio out there available that are just that blew me away. And I'm a technician.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a tech for a year, and when I started getting into ham radio
Let's.
last November and got my license,
Uh-huh.
I found out there's so many different things. One's called Internet Radio Link Project, and you can actually hook a radio to the internet and talk to different repeaters and stuff over the internet, and vice versa. They can use your radio and broadcast out. It's just there's so many things to the hand. We couldn't go through everything in one session.
Yeah, no, I
but
understand. Let's talk one
we'll
second
go for
first
the
of all.
important stuff.
Exactly, yeah. The important things, there are different levels for the ham radio. So let's say how many levels you got, and let's spell it out. You need to pass a test. You need to have a license to operate the ham radio. That means to broadcast. You can listen to it without a license. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that is pretty sure, but I want to double check. But you cannot broadcast unless you've been licensed. Correct.
Correct. You have to. The In fact, you have to be licensed to use the General Mobile Radio Service, GMRS,
Yeah.
as it's called, that you buy but that license is $90 with no test. There is a move by the FCC to get rid of that, but it's not gone yet. And I learned that $90 later. The FRS channels are family radio service that you get on those little radios. Anybody can use them.
Like a walkie-talkie, like the Motorola walkie-talkie 36 miles. What is that exactly?
Right. And Citizens Band Radio also no longer needs a license.
Okay.
The problem with the FRS and GMRS and the 36-mile range, if you were on a mountaintop, each on a mountaintop with no obstructions, you might, if you're lucky and the propagation works, you might get 30 miles.
Mm-hmm.
But more than likely, you're not going to get more than 2 or 3 miles without a repeater.
Yeah.
So, and the same with the radios we're going to talk about, the Baofangs. They run from the handheld type, which we call handy talkies, and we don't call them walkie talkies in the ham world.
Yeah.
Just so you're not embarrassed when you talk to somebody, but they call them HTs or handy talkies, and they range from 1 watt to 7 or 8 watts.
Mm-hmm.
And they can get you quite a bit of range. I've had some success, pretty good success with the ones I've used. And there's
this one,
not
just to understand, to be clear, so people don't, sometimes I just try to play idiot because I am an idiot. I don't know everything. For example, these handheld ham radios. We're talking about this. They need still a license to be operated, correct?
Right. Anything that operates on the ham frequencies that are set aside by the FCC, you need a license.
But you can listen. We could have on one, and I can listen without interfering, without broadcasting, without license, correct?
Oh, yeah. I have one set up as a police scanner, an emergency scanner. I can scan all the emergency frequencies in my area. I have it set so I can't transmit on those.
Mm-hmm.
You can set them up. And mine is set up to receive the NOAA channels, weather channels, which is free and open. And then I also on mine, I have it set up so I can transmit on certain frequencies to certain.
Mm-hmm. It's like we own a car. I can have a car parked in my, parking lot. It doesn't mean that I need to have a license because I'm not driving it. That's the bottom line. So that's just to be clear. So everyone who wants to have the opportunity to listen what's going on. And I think the ham radio has a lot of potential in case we have a breakdown of communications, especially the internet. we can have a chance to communicate much more bigger distances, and especially to listen and to be informed. So that would be a good step to have one of these little handheld, like this radio that you talk about is exactly the brand. Let me see if I remember, because my brain. This one I have myself, the Baofeng, whatever it's called, right?
Right. And in fact, you know, just to have one for that you can monitor the ham frequencies. You're allowed to listen to any frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they even have an FM radio button, but they don't have AM, so they can't turn on K-Talks. Sorry,
Okay.
you'll have to.
Okay.
But you'll have to listen through the internet or on the radio. But you can set them up to listen to the ham frequencies for emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where likely you're going to get your first information.
Exactly.
The TV and other radio sources. TV will probably be gone. Radio sources, let's say all those are gone. Ham radios, somebody's going to have one that works. And there's a lot of different methods of communication that we could go over, but mainly we're talking about voice.
Yes, correct me if I'm wrong. The ham radio, you have a chance also to receive a shortwave frequencies with ham radio.
Yes, we're in some model in the high frequency range, not with the handhelds that you have, like the Baofangs and stuff like that. The Baofangs, and there's others like Alan Co, I believe it is, ICOM, Yaesu. Yaesu is a real popular model.
Yeah, I have one Yaesu. I like Yaesu.
And they get more expensive. But the thing is, they operate in what we call the 2-meter range, or hold on a second. I should have had my notes ready. But anyway, about 144 megahertz to 148. And they operate in the UHF range from about 420 to 450. The Baofangs operate a little bit out of that area, I think, but you can only transmit on those areas. And then, of course, there's certain frequencies in that frequency range that are set aside just for Morse code, so you can't transmit phone or voice in that area.
You know what I like about the idea of short waves, especially if we have a collapse of society or some sort of a scenario, could be like martial law or emergency, you're able to listen, and I say listen, from broadcast from all over the world. I have, through my shortwave and even through one of these little, Yaesu that I have, sometimes I get from China. I was able to get the radio from the Vatican. I mean, it's amazing stuff. In the middle of nowhere, Arizona, on top of some mountains, I'm able to listen to what's going on in Italy. That's if the right conditions, at the right time of the day and the year. So that's amazing. I think it's a great investment, even if you don't want to become a technician, if you don't want to pass the test, and of course you don't want to broadcast. Just as a listener, I think it's a great opportunity. Now, talking about the different levels, you are a technician. I remember because I was going to try to do the test. I just didn't have time, and then I tell you why I didn't do it. But how many levels you have to become a ham radio operator?
Actually, I have the top license, so I can use any frequency and any mode available on the FCC. You start out, basically it's a $15 fee to take the test, and you can pass as many as you can. So if you want to study for the technician in general and amateur extra, and you can pass them all, you just pay $15 and you got the highest. It starts out as technician level, and then you get then you can try for the general license, and then the top is amateur extra.
Wow.
Now, before they had two other, they had a novice and I can't remember what the other license is, but if you have obtained those licenses, they're still good. And you can pay the $15 to take the test. But most people have just kept their old license because it's good and they can keep renewing it. Once you get a license, you just have to renew it in the time period. You don't have to pay another fee,
I've just a
and
question. I
it's
know
good
that.
for 10 years.
What is exactly, government claiming authority, ownership of the airwaves? We understand that. This is pretty much what happens also with the AM and FM. You need to go there and they tell you if you can operate or not. Now, when it comes down to ham radio, okay, you do a test that I understand because I got the books, I studied the books, and I tell you why I didn't do the test. You pretty much show that you have some knowledge about the basics of how to broadcast and exactly all the things that you should know as a broadcaster, okay? And then you pass this test, and then they give you the holy word and the blessing. You pay the $15 or whatever, and you become an operator. But exactly the purpose of to give you a license. Why you think in the ham radio it's so important that the government must give you this license, and they can tell?
Well, like you said, the licenses tell you what tell theoretically tell the government and other ham radio operators what level of expertise you should have. So,
Mm-hmm.
and even though I'm an amateur extra, I haven't operated on HF yet. So, and I'm working on getting like a Morse code what they call QRP or low power Morse code
Mm-hmm.
receiver transmitter. But it's theoretically tells the government what level of knowledge you have to
Okay.
operate, and they've licensed since you know TV and radio began, and it's mainly to make sure that I think the best way to put it is probably to keep from interfering with other. In other words, if you have two people who want to start an FM station, they can't be on the same
No, I,
frequency.
I
So,
understand that part.
and the
I understand.
FCC is there to stop them.
Yeah,
The same sort of thing with uh,
with the
ham
ham.
operators.
Yeah.
They want to make sure you're not going to interfere with somebody else.
Okay. I mean,
And
technically, let's say I have a ham radio. Okay, it's
mm,
not like I'm a radio station that's my frequency. I am, I don't know, 1340 AM. That's my frequency. Leave me alone. I understand the government try to put some sort of space and boundaries so there is no anarchy. That's fine. I'm with that for a moment. But the point is, when you have ham radio, you don't have like a frequency, do you? I don't think so.
no, no, there's no assigned frequency except in an event of an actual emergency.
Okay.
In other words, in my area, there are certain repeaters and frequencies set aside that if we had an emergency, um, I could not talk on those except for an actual emergency.
I see. I see. I see.
And part of uh, there's a group called American Radio Relay League, which was started basically when ham radio started, like getting licenses, and they work closely with the government. So it's it's uh, it's the only group that actually has. I mean, if you go to the EPA and say, I don't think this chemical or these lights are
Mm-hmm.
safe, they're going to tell you to pack sand.
Yeah.
The FCC, on the other hand, when the ARL or ham radios operators talk with them, they communicate and they try and arrange something for fair for the people and the government, and also they are responsible for making sure that, like for example, Canada and Mexico, we can't operate on certain frequencies or ranges in certain areas, so we don't interfere with Canada
I
and
understand.
so forth.
My,
So they do the international thing too.
my only problem, I tell you what it is, it's like a gun, okay? Of course, if the government already knows how many guns you have, but if you have a chance, it would be nice that your guns are all private. Now, I understand that, you don't want to live in a wild west. That means when you have a radio and you need to broadcast, you need to have some basic rules of etiquette and decency. That means also we keep not interfering with each other, especially if you're in the broadcast business. But it's kind of scary when you have, for example, your name out there. I know when you become an operator, your name is public. You have a public
Everywhere.
license. You are posted everywhere on the website. I can go, for example, in the city of Williams, and there is public information. I can see how many operators they have. So
Oh
let's.
yeah, if you go to radioreference.com, it lists every ham operator in this area. If you go to the FCC website, you can search my call sign KG7YDJ, and it gives you the information on my license. But I don't want to say it gives you the address.
Okay, but doesn't matter. All I need to know is your name, and I find out. But my point is, if I was a tyrannical government, or let's say if I was some foreign troops, okay, invading this country, and there is an emergency. Let's think about Katrina, okay? Without getting too fancy, I'm not even going to Red Dawn scenario. That pretty much could be well happening, since we already have Chinese troops exercising in New York State and be stationed in Hawaii. I'm sure you're familiar with that the last few months, thanks to Obama. The first thing I would do if I was trying to declare some sort of emergency or martial law, any type of scenario, I need to control the information. First thing, it's out of the book. I remember when I was in military school, first thing you do, you control the information. You are the information. The propaganda. The official propaganda is the all information. So what do? You need to shut up the slaves. So what do? We go to look for everybody with a ham radio, and we round them up. Because these people are more dangerous than people with guns, in my opinion.
And that's a situation that is possible. I'm not, like you were saying Red Dawn. I thought of that when they told him to go find the certain forms that tells all the gun owners. Well, the FFLs have those forms.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And it could happen that way. I mean, there's no question in my mind. But that's what's nice about certain. See, like I have handhelds, but will they work? I don't know. But with a QRP Morse code system, I can communicate depending on propagation with most of the U.S.
I think at least I think we need more ham radio operators. That's my point, because it's an asset to the true homeland security of we the people, to have free individuals that we can propagate free information. That's vital for an emergency. Could be, for example, anything. We could have the internet down. Remember, there was last year in Navajo County, there was somebody by accident supposedly shot one of these pipeline of this DSL, and all the county was down with Verizon. Okay.
Well, if you remember, was it last year? All of Arizona was cut off.
Exactly.
Because somebody cut.
Yeah.
And they said, they tried to, the media tried to go around it, but somebody had cut through the fiber optics lines.
Exactly.
And I can tell you exactly that the fiber optic lines don't just accidentally break because they're cold or there's water.
Yeah.
Those things have to be cut with a sophisticated cutting device. I mean, they're not something. I mean, you could take a torch and it'd take you a while to get through them. So
you need to know where they are and all the things. So for me, in my opinion, there is no kid out there playing some pranks. That was a dry run. Seriously, I really believe that was the fact. But regardless, even if it wasn't, things can happen.
And that's where then exactly a situation where ham radio would step in.
Exactly.
And you would be able to communicate with your friends. And, if one battery goes dead or whatever, you still have another one, because these are cheap enough. You can buy 2 or 3 of them and have them handy.
Let's talk about money. For example, the one that the Boy Fong, whatever it's called, maybe you can spell it better than me. The basic model, I know there are a couple models. First of all, what type of power we are talking about in watts, and how much is the cost? I think I know it, but I write to ask to you.
Okay. Well, I started out. In fact, one of the reasons I got into it was the Oath Keepers are setting up community protection teams, committees of safety, and it didn't work in my area, but that's another story. And they introduced me to this Baofeng before I had a license. So I ordered the Baofeng UV82, which is a 1 watt and 5 watt radio. and it comes with most of these radios come standard with about a 1200 milliamp hour battery.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, in layman's terms, I can run listening. I can listen for 10 to 12 hours before the battery gets
Wow.
too weak.
Wow.
Transmitting, that probably cuts uh, a quarter off of the time, depending on how much I transmit, of
Mm-hmm.
course. And you're not going to be transmitting all the time. You're going to be listening. And but they come also with a 3800 milliamp hour battery, which is three times the size of the standard, and it gives you basically that much power, that much more transmit and receive time.
And how much money we're talking for about this basic Befong radio?
Well, the Baofeng UV82 that I bought
Mm-hmm.
at the time was about $70 with shipping,
Mm-hmm.
and I bought it mainly because it had certain features I wanted, and I was going to use it to practice. And if I break it, so what? You know, it
Yeah.
wasn't that much money.
Yeah.
Now you can find these for like 25 to $30 plus shipping.
Wow.
You know, they're about half what I bought for.
Yes. Now this is really good. That's my point. It is very affordable. We're talking about $30 or so. And
Right.
even if people say, as I said, we need licensed operators that they're professionally trained, or at least they try to do their best to set up a network of communications in case something happens. But also we need American people that they able at least to listen to this broadcast. And as I said before at the beginning of the show, to listen, you do not need to have a license. You just need to know how to learn, to listen, and being shut up. That's the bottom line. Now,
And in that case, you can learn a lot without having to go through the licensing. Because, like I said, when ham operators talk, and especially in an emergency, they have to be accurate and to the point. So there's not a lot of bull going on in an emergency. They broadcast and say, there's an accident on first and third. They need police to, and then you can't go to first and third if you're like in having to get out of an area or evacuate an area. You want to take another route. Say
yes.
things like that. Um, and in fact, let me cover my progression, if you will, on these. I also bought later the BF F9, which is an 7-watt radio, and I got a lot greater range. And also, of course, if I bought a mag mount antenna that goes on your car,
Mm-hmm.
which was about $16, I think. They're around that, and I can actually extend my range further with that kind of antenna than the one that comes with it. Now, they receive pretty good no matter where you are.
Mm-hmm.
You can receive from quite a ways. You may get a little static and stuff depending on the weather and things like that. But when you're transmitting, like I do, I've worked. I like to have like a mag mount or an antenna. I'm designing or building a couple of antennas that have been designed for emergency purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but recently, Baofeng and there's another one called Y YTY, I think it is, and there's a couple other cheap model radios. Like Baofeng put out one called BTEC UV 2501, and they put out a UV 20. They put out another version that uses another band. It's a tri band,
Mm.
and then they put out one UV 5001. Well, the 2501 is roughly 25 watts, but it actually puts out a little more than that in some cases.
Yeah.
And the 5001 is a 50-watt radio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I got the cheaper one to experiment because it runs off your car. You can plug it into, it has a cigarette lighter
Yeah.
adapter.
Like, for
Okay.
example, talking about this type of, because they're my favorite, honestly. I mean, I know that you can get a great home station, okay, with a big antenna and probably reach the moon if you want to, but then you're kind of static, okay? I mean static, you're stationary, that's what I meant. But let's
Right.
say in an emergency you want to be mobile, and I'll leave it like that, okay? I don't want to get too much into scenarios,
Right.
but I think one
Well,
of the best thing, because you can be pinpointed immediately. Let's say you broadcast, okay, and there is an emergency, they can triangle you very much by the yard, by very accuracy, pinpoint you down. Is it true or not? I mean, if you
oh yeah. If in fact, if the FCC has teams that if you're see if you transmit on certain frequencies, if you're not being a nuisance, then most people probably won't even say anything. The FCC certainly won't. But if you're being a nuisance and causing problems,
mm-hmm.
they do have in some areas, mostly major metropolitan areas, the ability to triangulate you, and teams set up to do that to stop you from interfering with people who are trying to enjoy ham radio or use it for emergency. So yeah, that is possible, and that's possible with any radio. You can do the same thing to a military radio, for example.
Mm-hmm. So
I can triangulate where they are.
exactly. So the idea to have anyway a radio that you can, let's say, broadcast while driving or while on the move. I think it's very, very good thing to have, because sometimes
Yeah.
you gotta
Now,
just
if you're moving, it's harder to find you if you're
exactly.
driving. So it's
So I like my little ignorance, because I'm not really an expert, but as I said, I like to study a little bit of everything, and I'm fascinated about the ham world. Even I have all the books, and I probably study a lot, but I never did the test. And I don't broadcast, so don't get too really excited out there that I'm breaking any laws, because I'm just enjoying to listen. That's all I do. I talk enough on the radio here. So anyway, the YAE, so for example, FT 857D or similar models, they are kind of a mid-range price. Okay, we're talking about $800. This is no more than little $30, $40 radio. We're talking about something for the next level. But you can also plug those in, for example, in the car, or even just have them with a battery, charge them and put them on. They give you like a little pack that you can wear them on you, and you can hike, you can walk. Did you ever try
yeah,
those?
yeah. Now there's other options with those kind of radios too that people may not have thought about. See, with mine, I can only broadcast, and like I can set up an antenna. And if you remember the old World War II radio packs, basically I can make one of those out of an Alice pack
Mm-hmm.
with an
Yes.
antenna up that I can move with the group or whatever.
Yes.
Like, for example, in a search for a kid, I can move with a group and communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you can do that with handhelds, but the big thing about those upper end radios that you're talking about, there's Woosan that has them, and there's several models, Alenco. Anyway, Alenco. I'm sorry, I kept pronouncing it wrong. Anyway, you can buy two of those, say get two 50-watt radios, tie them together, and you make a repeater
Wow.
so that in an emergency, I could take one of those, and that's one of my goals actually, so that if all the repeaters are down in my area with, say, electrical problems,
Mm-hmm.
I can hike up to a high level, set up an antenna, and set up a repeater for other handhelds to use for emergencies.
Wow.
So you can that's another option, and that's a good option because in an emergency, like I say, you may lose electrical,
Yeah.
and if you can get a station high enough and an antenna high enough, antennas are the most important part of transmitting, and in fact receiving. So, like I say, with the what we call the rubber duck antenna that comes with the bow fangs and these other handhelds, they're good. You can receive quite a ways, but you can also hook an antenna up and stick it on your roof and listen, and still not violate the law as long as the HOA allows it or whatever. But see, the nice thing about FCC regulations is, in most cases, I can fight an HOA or anything by and be allowed to put up a tower and antenna pretty much anywhere because it's used for emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so the FCC comes in and says, "Wait a minute, you guys need to back off because this is a." Now some HOAs get away with stopping people. I've heard problems with that, but in the city building codes, as long as I'm complying with the safety regulations, and the safety regulations for FCC towers is a little more stringent than the local city guy because he doesn't even know what it is
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. So basically, I can set up an antenna as long as it's not interfering with other people's
I understand. Now,
things.
this is interesting, guys. Please, the reason why I'm pushing and not pushing and try to spend some time on this topic because communication it's the most vital part on any type of emergency or resistance or any type of defense or anything. If without communication you're like blind, you don't have intelligence, you don't have information. And we don't need to go into some crazy scenarios. All you need to think about it, we have an EMP, for example, that some of the satellites goes down, and the internet is also part of the satellite. Okay, and and of course we need to take care of your hardware because if there is an EMP, now maybe you, Glenn, you're an expert also on this, or at least you study a lot about this. I was reading some of your stuff. You know, for example, let's say I have walkie-talkies or I have a ham radio, and there is a big EMP or there is a big solar storm. My walkie-talkie or my ham radio may be compromised if not shielded.
That's true. I've read. See, the problem with EMP is we really don't know what'll happen. We really don't. We do know that it's the same as a solar flare,
Mm-hmm.
basically,
Yeah.
only on a much more massive scale. And so there is the possibility of the electronics in your walkie-talkie going down. That's why in my emergency setup that I'm putting together, I've looked at various bags, EMP bags and stuff that I could package them in to package in my Alice pack
Mm-hmm.
so that I could take and grab them and run um, and, set up an emergency system.
Yeah.
So, and have that available. Now, interestingly enough, somebody told me about the metal trash cans. And I looked up some interesting videos on them and seen some tests where I'm kind of convinced that if you get a metal trash can,
Mm-hmm.
the big 33-gallon or 50-gallon, whatever they are type, and put your stuff in there, it could shield most of your stuff from EMP. So that's another option. And one guy recommended putting cardboard inside, and I kind of agree with that because that prevents uh, electrons from going through into the thing a little better, and it's just an extra protection. But that's one thing you could do: set that up in your garage, in your truck, or whatever. Any kind of metal container is kind of EMP resilient. So that's that's something to consider definitely.
Another thing I found out, probably maybe people can make them themselves. They sell some specialized mylar bags that they are technically made exactly, at least marketed exactly for this sort of protection for, let's say, electronic equipment from solar flares or EMP. Little pricey, but I think the idea of this sort of a Faraday cage, like you were talking about, this sort of a trash can made of metal, it's a really good idea. What about probably the same concept would be if you have like a shipping container, that's technically almost like a Faraday cage, don't you think?
Right, and they do make some really good metal camera cases and stuff that you could try that you could use.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be clear, these radios that we're talking about, the Baofangs, are very dependent on microelectronics, microcomputer, and stuff like that. So they're very susceptible to EMP. The batteries themselves may work. I've read one argument that batteries it may even charge a little bit, but if you don't have any electrical to use them, they're kind of useless.
Exactly.
Um, but so these things that we're talking about are very susceptible to uh, EMP attacks.
Hmm.
There are, however, if you can find them, there are old pieces of equipment that still use tubes and stuff.
The analogical things, right? The old transistor stuff, not these computerized things, right?
Right, exactly. But mainly, if you can find the tube stuff, and of course you'll have to find tubes for them to
Hmm.
replace.
Yeah,
Those are less susceptible to EMP attacks.
yeah, yeah. No,
And but yeah, the older bulk transistors are probably a little more resistant than what we got now,
hmm.
but they're still a little susceptible. Um, but these are you know you can still find these on the internet. In fact, I've looked at a few that I want to order when I'm able to get into high frequency communications.
Very good. No, Arist, I'm glad. And guys, don't get too bored or don't get too, oh my God, is this such a Greek talk or Italian talk? No, this is about give you the beginning of your journey. Put some curiosity into you. The idea that you don't need to become a technician, you don't need to become an expert. All you need to do is start to buy your little ham radio for $30 or so. The Boy Fong, or now I would like please say again the right way, if you even can spell it out, because I want to everybody know for sure. And you can buy this little radio, comes with a little booklet. And by the way, online you can find on YouTube a lot of videos that explain how to use it, just even how to operate to listen. And that's how you're going to do, because you don't want to break the rules. You know, you don't want to sound like an idiot when you don't have a license. And but you can listen. And in the moment of emergency, you're able to listen, and God's willing, somebody's trying to harm you. You know what? I'm not gonna tell you you're breaking the law or not, but I tell you, if somebody's trying to harm you, I think at that point, you know, if you have a radio, you need to ask for help. You know what? I rather to challenge the law than, you know, we can talk later after how many fines I'm gonna get. But
Well, actually, I should stipulate also that you need a license for normal operation.
mm-hmm.
If there's an emergency that is a possible loss of life
Mm-hmm.
or property, you can use them.
Excellent.
Okay, you can use any frequency. In fact, you should use the frequency that's most likely to make contact. In other words, don't flip through and try and
Mm-hmm.
everything. You should know in your area, okay, these frequencies. And if you go to a local ham group meeting, even if you're not a ham operator,
Yes.
they'll tell you, this is the frequency we use. Here, we'll program it for you.
Yes, no, they're very nice, by the way. I've been a couple of these meetings in the area, you know, when I was getting my books and try to learn. Very friendly people. It's like a club. They try to, they want you blood. They want people informed and educated, try to be good broadcasters. That's their goal. And I like that. Honestly, it's a great thing that people you help each other. That's the spirit, okay? Now, question is, for example, you are in Williams, okay? I am in Mojave County. Let's say out of the blue, you know, everything goes down. No more internet, no more cell phones, no more phones. How could we be able to talk? Or at least how could I be able to listen to you with my ham radio, for example, Yaesu, or what should I do?
Well, there's two types of operation in radios. One of them is called simplex. That's just radio to radio.
Okay.
Okay, I just set in a frequency, like say 14785, and you put in 14785 and we talk.
Mm-hmm.
The other operation is through repeaters.
Yes.
And repeaters give you the range. They also make GMRS repeaters, but again, you have to have a license to use them. And so if the electrical's still up and the repeaters are still up, and you had the Williams repeater, we just got ours up, by the way, the WIN repeater, thanks to the guys who operate that. And that's something people got to understand is this is all volunteer.
Yes.
There's no pay for going up and setting up these repeaters or fixing them. So, you know, we really appreciate the guys that do this, and I volunteered to help
Hmm.
myself.
Yes.
But so if the power's still working in Williams, you could, if you had a good antenna, and say all your power's out and none of your repeaters are working,
Hmm.
you could theoretically talk to my repeater and I could talk back and forth to you. But let's say that's not an option. Let's say that it's my repeater's down too.
Hmm.
All the power is knocked out in Arizona, for example, or northern Arizona. That's where I get. If I could walk up to Bill Williams Mountain where the repeaters are, if I can get up there, I could set up a repeater and we could talk.
Hmm.
Because with 50 watts, I should be able to reach. Well, you're in Golden Valley. That might be tough, but it could.
Yeah.
If I have a good antenna or can hook into a good antenna, you should still be able to talk back and forth.
But with the repeaters, they will really help. I mean, the repeaters, you can
Right.
technically create a network across the states. That's the most important thing. Listen, we're almost at the end of the time. I want to thank you, first of all, for even just putting this sort of curiosity, this seed into hopefully the new people who are listening. Now, you got another 60 seconds before I have to final this part of this hour. I want people to remember, first of all, your website with your news. You have an independent news outlet, and also your website where people can look for your books. You also book out. Please go ahead.
Yeah, our time always goes fast, doesn't it? Anyway,
Yeah.
I
Well,
do have a northernArizonaGazette.com. My website for my ham, where I discuss a lot of this, and I try and keep it as non technical as possible, is KG7YDJ at KG7YDJ.us. That's my call sign, and it should be easy to remember. I'm also a accredited volunteer examiner, by the way. So I can, with two other hams or three other hams, I can administer any of these tests. So if your group down there needs help,
wow, that's great.
uh, I'm available to come down and help with doing exams.
That's really good, really good.
Um, and basically, ham is fun. You meet a lot of great people, but also, like you said, for an emergency situation, there is when everything else is down, it's hard to beat.
Yeah.
So
That's good. Listen, I appreciate it. So please go to Glenn's website because it's also we need to support independent media, people that try to put the news without the filters. And in every community, I hope more people coming out with ideas like yours. I really appreciate that. Now, before we go ahead, you can stay with me. I have 5 more minutes. I have to pretty much share one thing. I am launching a product, okay? That is nothing new. It's a rifle, okay? And by the way, I am not. It's not going to be the last rifle, the first rifle. There are billions of rifles, thankfully, out there. But what I envision in my little dreaming, I wanted to think that every law-abiding person in this country, every American woman or man, or I don't care which sex you are, even if you're a transgender, I couldn't care less. Anybody who believes in freedom, she needs to have at least one rifle. Now, the economy is tough, times are tough. Some people are waking up, and thankfully, at least you're waking up. But maybe you don't want to wait for Christmas to have a rifle. You don't want to wait the next year. You want the rifle today. Okay, I'm not a gun manufacturer. I'm not even a gun dealer. I'm just a guy that likes to think, and sometimes I think too much. Probably I should, just drink more wine. But I came up with this idea, and it's called the Don't Tread on Us rifle, okay? It's a rifle that takes the name from one of my songs, Don't Tread on Us. I created this package in a combination with a local Arizona manufacturer who creates lowers, and I will get more descriptive next time. Pretty much that I can offer a rifle to the public for less than $500. I'm talking about an AR-15 military grade chamber in 5.56, okay? This is not target shooting stuff. This is not match shooting. This is a military grade barrel, military grade receiver, anything that can stand the idea that this rifle is to defend your life, your property, and this republic. Spell it out. Simple as that. So, and as I said, there is a way. I'm not a dealer, and I'm not going to become an FFL dealer, but I will follow the rule and the law, of course. There is a way that through FFL dealer, this rifle will be available for an incredible price of $499. An AR-15 made all in the USA, no Chinese crap, okay? And most of the parts, they're made in the Arizona, the state of Arizona, at least the lower. Now, and it's assembled in Arizona. Now, beside that, I also believe the biggest weapon that we need is called education. So you don't just get a rifle, but also you're gonna get a package of ebook, how to become a rifleman. I'm not here to be Davy Crockett, but I did several schools, education, and I did graduated to many of them, and I also qualify, for example, for the Army qualification test with Appleseed Group, or I also graduated from the front side classes. So all I'm doing, humbly sharing what I learned in this ebook, because I want to have everybody with a gun or a rifle to have some basic knowledge. And of course, I hope you can attend classes and do more than just buy my ebook. But the ebook, it's free. So you get the rifle, you get the ebook, how to become a rifleman. You get also a beautiful copy of a parchment of the United States Constitution that you can bring with you and put in the butt of your rifle. That's the most important weapon we must show to the vampires, like garlic, holy water on their skin. Show them the Constitution. They need to abide by the Constitution. Remind them, and that's why we have a rifle, to defend this Constitution. And then, of course, I also give you a beautiful, it's a little more, an old CD, Don't Tread on Us, for digital download. It's worth $10. Normally on Amazon $4.99, and you get also an engraved, laser engraved, Don't Tread on Us personalization of the rifle on the ejection part of the dust cover. Okay, all that for $4.99. We're talking about really. I'm not doing this for the dollars because I really make almost no money. Okay, but this is not the government. I'm not socialist. I need to make a buck too. But it's going to be really little profit. But my only goal is not for the money. This is about to give everybody the opportunity to buy a decent AR-15 for the price that normally you buy a cheap handgun. Okay? That's the bottom line. So that's what I want to do. If you are curious, I'll tell you how to do it. Go to this website, rifletraining.tv. Or even better, I bought a new domain name today that it will redirect there. It's called freedomrifle.com. Okay, freedomrifle.com or rifletraining.tv, and there is the page about the Don't Tread on Us rifle. You can send an email. If you're interested, send an email and choose which configuration would you like. Okay, and I'll let you know when the rifle is available. Now, time to go. Thank you, Glenn. Keep me posted, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you. Now, don't go away, guys. Next hour,